is about getting PFSense Community Edition running in Azure with twin or two network interface cards, a WAN and a LAN. To get started, we're in the Azure portal. Let's create a resource group. And I'm putting it in Australia East. And just create that. Then from there we want to create a virtual network and just leave the defaults for security. Now, recommendation here is to change this because some commodity modems have 10.0.0.0, or at least in Australia they do, as their default range, and you don't want to have range collisions if you've got clients dialing in. So just change that and then start with adding a new subnet. Now, the first subnet we want to add is the front end subnet where the WAN interface of the PFSense is going to reside. We don't need 256 addresses in that, so just make it the smallest and leave the other settings as default. And then we want to create a back-end network, and notice we're using the subnet template as default. This is the back-end where we're going to put clients that are being protected by the PFSense, and again leave the defaults. So once we've done that, we can hit create and just wait for that to happen. And it's saying go to VNet, and we've got our subnets looking good. Now, the next step is we want to start creating our virtual hard drive, the VHD, from scratch. So if we go new hard drive, and we use this new hard drive wizard because we've got to change from DX to VHD. We're going to have a fixed size one. Just give it a name, and we don't need a big hard drive like that, so we can make it smaller and then hit finish. Now that's going to take some time to process, so what we might do in the meantime is we want to add for ourselves a virtual machine we can use to test connectivity to the PFSense. Now, it could be a Windows machine, it could be anything you really wanted, but I'm just going to create a Linux instance. I'm going to call it test, and we're going to say no infrastructure redundancy. Ubuntu server's good. Now it's 1 vCPU. I might try and bump that up to 2. Yeah, so more memory and faster IOs per second. Yep. So B2MS, and I'm just going to change this to password authentication and copy and paste a password in so that I don't have to type it a dozen times. This will be blown away once we've finished creating the PFSense anyway. Allow, and before we make the create, we can just have a look at networking, just make sure that it's in the correct VNet and it's in the back subnet. So hit review and create, and create. And as that deploys, we'll just go back and check on our virtual hard drive creation, and it's still taking some time. So while we wait for that, let's review the script we're going to use. So this is a PowerShell script using the PowerShell AZ command. So you can see that they all have AZ in the name. And what this will do is we'll take the virtual hard drive that we create and upload and use it as the foundation for a new VM. And this new VM will have two network interface cards. So we'll have the WAN one as this primary one, and then we'll have the LAN one as a secondary NIC. And we're enabling Boot Diagnostics as well, and we'll go through running this script in a little bit. Now we know that we've got some values in here that we need to make line up with reality, so we can just do that as we wait for the hard disk to be created. So we just have to paste in and save. It's asking us for a storage account there as well, so we need to create a storage account to hold the virtual hard drive. So we can hit create for storage account. Again, put in the same resource group. Australia East. It doesn't need to be geo-redundant. We hit advanced, we just leave everything the way it is, and then hit create when we're ready, and go back and check our hard drive has been created, which the wizard stopped, so yes it has. So now we want to create our virtual machine, and just call it TGM PFS 01. Generation 1, assign memory to it, give it the default switch. Now it defaults to this VHDX. We don't want that, we want the one we've created, so we just change it to this, and then we hit finish. Now we go into our settings, and there's a couple of things we want to change. We want to remove checkpoints, and we also want to add the image file that we're going to install from. Now this is a PFSense installation ISO, and you get that from pfsense.org download, and just choose the ISO installer and AMD 64. So once that's installed, we can just go connect and hit start, and it should boot from the ISO. And while we wait for that to boot, we might go and check on our storage account. Now you can do everything from the GUI here, but we can also use the Azure Storage Explorer. So download and install this, connect your account to and then refresh, and you can see that you've got an application that you can run. This is from last time, but now what we can do, we can say I want to create a container, call it VHD, and we're going to upload a file here. So once we run through the installation wizard of PFSense in the Hyper-V image here, just accept all the defaults, proceed with installation, no redundancy, choose the disk that you want to install to, and say yes to install to that disk again, and then just we'll wait for that to complete. Now once that's completed, it's going to say, do you want to reboot? I'm just going to shut the system down and wait for a minute while it shuts down. So it syncs disks, and then it says press any key to reboot. But before we reboot, I'm just going to remove the ISO image, and then once we've done that, we can boot back into the PFSense image on the hard drive. Now this is going to now pick up an IP address and just ask us a question. So what we need to do is we'll get the browser, just minimize it down to here, so that we can enter the correct IP address. Now it's saying, should VLANs be set up now? I'm going to say no. Enter the WAN interface for A for auto detection. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to go HN0 and then go yes. So now it's obviously pulled an IP address from Hyper-V DHCP service, so we want to put that in. So 172.1.7.185.89. Now I've just entered that into the browser, but we do need to wait because it's starting up services that are needed. When it gets to web configurator, it'll have started the web server, and we should now be able to connect, and we get the security error. So it's, your connection is not private. Continue. Now PFSense by default, when you first install, has admin and PFSense as the password, and the first thing you want to do is to set the password. Let's just use this one. There we go. Make sure that looks okay. It does. And then go save. Now there's a couple of things we could do. You could tweak everything and then upload it, but the important things is we want a serial terminal and serial console. I want to save that. Then we want to just have a look at one other thing. You might run into this, but you might not. But you might need to disable that enforcement check if you ever find it warns you about it, but don't worry about it now. So I'm just going to halt the system. So halt our VM, and because we're here, we can just watch the screen for a few moments while, as soon as the start button reappears, you know it's shut down properly. And as soon as you see the start button, you can move on. Now, the next step is we want to compress this hard disk so that we can upload it to Azure quickly. So, oops, I'll just go back. Edit. This is just grabbing the path to the hard drive. Just leave it at the default. So now I go show more options, 7-zip, and I want to add it to a compressed folder, or just compress it with 7-zip. So that's now compressing. What we want to do next is go into Azure and find our test virtual machine and grab the public IP address. So we just need to wait for that to show up, and then hit copy to clipboard. And then we want to say, with the correct account that we've already configured for it, we go yes. And again, we use this password here. And I think it's good. Right. Now the first thing I want to do is just update the package list. For this is a fresh VM. And as soon as this is finished, what we then want to do is just install two utilities. The first one we want is apt-get install p7zip full. So that just basically gives us 7-zip. And then we want to do a Google for download azcopy. And download azcopy, and we want to grab the link to the Linux binary. and it's wget. We want to output azcopy.tar gzip, and there we go. Tar extract zip verbose azcopy. I spelled it wrong, and it won't auto-complete when it's spelt wrong. So go zxvf azcopy, and now that should, what we want to do is put that in our path somewhere. We could obviously use it just from where we were, but if you want to use it again, you might want to. All right, so that's now working. We have 7-zip, and we should almost have finished zipping our file up, which we have. So now what we want to do here is, using Storage Explorer, upload a file, and it's just find the location of your 7-zip file and double click on it and click upload. Now, every now and then, if things are flaky, the transfer might fail at the first instance and you'll have to start it again, but once it starts, it seems to continue okay. So we're just uploading it. It's about 400 meg, if memory serves me correct. Yeah, so it's not a big file, but can you see the difference? 16 gig as opposed to 400 meg, and it just saves probably an hour, half an hour, depending on the internet speed, upload time. So once that upload is completed, that's interesting, slow. Once that upload completes, we then need to copy from this storage container to our VM and unpack it, and then copy it back, which is a bit of a chore, but it's better than waiting for an hour for it to upload. So we just wait until that appears. Won't be too much longer. While we wait for that, maybe we can have a look at our create script again. Just got to make sure, let's double check the resource group is correct. So we go resource group, and it isn't, so we need to just copy the name of it and change it here so that it's going to be correct. So there's a few different things that just need to be changed. And the storage account name is one of them as well. So just put everything up the top that needs changing. Let's go and have a look at the storage account name. And yeah, it's different as well. So need to change that. So we're nearly, everything else from there on is pretty much, it stays the same, or you can tweak it to the way you want it. Make sure the subnet names, they've got to be correct as well. And they just have to match with the subnets, as you can see in here. So you've got these names here, they need to match. Now we should now have this uploaded, and what we're going to do now is get a shared access signature, and all we need is a read one for this file. So I'm just going to copy the entire URL and then go into my test VM and go azcopy, copy, and need to put this in single quotes to escape the shell characters that are in the string, and then we can just use the, actually we got that incorrect, just go Control E to get to the end again, and then we want to just say, okay, the target file name is pfs01.7zip. So if that's entered correctly, it will then quickly copy this. Now what we then need to do is 7zip a extract, and then just run it to extract it into the full size. Now check obviously for disk space that you've got room to do it. You might have to add a data disk or something to the machine if you're going to do that. Now we're almost there. Before we can run create VM, we do need to run connect AZ account and select the correct account, and it should show you the subscription as well. If that's the wrong subscription, you do need to go set AZ context and then give it not a subscription object but a subscription name, and whatever my subscription, whatever that is, you can then change the subscription to be the default. So now we have to have a look and see how long this is going to take. Well, it's going to take a while because it's decompressing 16 gig back in onto the file system, but we just have to wait for that to happen. Okay. So it's going to take a few minutes for this to unpack. So just going through here, this is the VMware SKU. This is a B1 memory small, I think it is. So it's a very small VM. Probably okay if you got a small office, but if you had, dozens of users or lots of VPN links, you want something a bit more grunty. Probably talk to Netgate regarding what you need, or take their recommendations. All these other commands, these are all from the so install AZ PowerShell. So just do a search for that. And here's the thing. Firstly, you need to be running PowerShell 7 or higher, and then you install the AZ module using this command here. And so that's required. Just need to be an administrator when you do it, or run the terminal in an administrative terminal. So we're slowly getting there. If you go into the Azure Marketplace and you search for PFSense, there is already a PFSense image that you can select. By default, these don't support two interfaces, so you've really got to add two interfaces anyway if you want to run it the way I'm demonstrating. So yeah, but this is good because then you get support and everything, and it just installs really easy. You just hit create and it's pretty much done, and then you just add a second interface if you want it. But that's the other option. Okay, so we're slowly getting there. Just have to wait. So it's getting close. So once that's done, what we want to do is we want to copy it back into the storage account. So to do that, we just click on the container and just say get storage, get shared access, signature here, get one with create, write abilities, and just hit create, and then copy the URL. And what that will do is it will give you a ability to write something, but you've got to modify that string. So we'll just wait, and we're finished. So now we need to say, okay, have a look at, we've got so you've got a 17 gig image there. That's what we need to copy back into the storage account. azcopy, copy again, and this time it's the VHD from this way. Again, we need to escape it, and we need to sort of skip back through the file and modify the URL. So we need to give it a target file name as well. So get to here, that's the directory, and now we need to say tgnp pfs01, and it's VHD. Control E to get back to the end of the line, the cursor back, and then just press enter. And this should now start to copy it back up. Now, if you have a subscription that's got enough cores, you could put in a nice big VM. I'm limited because this is a free trial subscription to 4 cores in an area, a location. So couldn't really give myself a fast VM, but that's the only difference is that this would happen a lot quicker if we had a bigger VM. And as you can see now, the azcopy saying, well, I'm guessing, but the disk I/O might be limiting my ability to transfer this file up to the network. So I'm not sure if that's true, but a bigger VM with more RAM and CPU would probably be quicker as well. So we've just got to wait for that to copy up. But while we do, I believe if we hit refresh, the file name will already be there. So what we can do is just copy that URL and make sure that in our PowerShell it's there. So that is pretty much everything that's needed now to create the VM and connect it to the correct NICs and import a disk image that we've copied up. And just going back to our VM, still going to take some time. So getting closer, halfway there. So 54, 55%. So this is still better than waiting for an upload of 16 gig to finish, but it still takes time. Getting closer. Nearly there. So nearly there. Just another few seconds, I think. And we're done. Okay, so successful 100%, that's good. So now we can run our script to create our VM. Now with this, yellow is deprecation warnings or warnings, red is errors, and green is good. So let's see if we've got any red. So we just press enter. And still just warnings. And hopefully will be good. So that looks like it's all been successful, but if there's errors, you'll have to go back through, and it can be that you've just got the wrong details in. These scripts do tend to date quickly, I suppose. So you might have to make tweaks to get it to work. So now we go back to our virtual machines, and we should see that we now have this PFS or PFSense VM running. Let's have a look at the status so far. If we go down to Boot Diagnostics, if we have a look at our script here, right at the bottom, we can say that we enabled Boot Diagnostics. Now, apparently that's not supported by PFSense, but I found it works fine, so which is good. You can say, oh, okay, at the current screen grab that it's done, it's actually still booting. So you're not expecting anything to work right at this moment. Then we hit refresh, and at some point, and we can always check the timestamp here with our system clock, and UTC is, this is an Australian time, but it's 48 and 48, so it's a current image. Hit refresh again. It still hasn't updated, but at some point in the near future, when I hit refresh, it may or may not. There it is. Okay, so we've just refreshed now. Now we can see the console screen, and it's booted. We can see it's received a DHCP address from the front subnet. So that's the front subnet. And if we go and have a look in the settings, we can see that, just click on here, maybe need to go overview, and just wait for a moment for the public IP to show up. So it's got this public IP, and now I'm just going to pop that in, and profoundly unsuccessful. So that is probably firewalled. It's probably something's not working. But to get into the console, is we just hit serial console here on the virtual machine, just under serial console. And so it clearly is not working. So we need to make some tweaks now to get it working. So once we've got the serial console, we've got a command line, which is great. Now we've already got we've got two interfaces. Now to show you that, before we do that, let's have a look at that. We've got networking here. We've got the front NIC, and it's already live and it's assigned. And then we've got the back NIC, and it says it's assigned, but let's see if the PFSense agrees with that. So go back into serial console and just wait for it to do its stuff. And as soon as that's ready, I think it's not happy with me changing backwards and forwards. Well, let's try that once more. There we go. Okay, so we've now got our console. Now we need to go back in and assign interfaces. Do VLANs? No, they don't. Enter the WAN interface. So we know that's HN0, so that's good. Enter the LAN interface, HN1. And that looks good. Now there's a bit of an issue here with these, because at the moment, as you can see, the HN1's got DHCP enabled and it's picking up an address, but HN1 isn't. So now we need to say number 2, set interface IP addresses, and 2, configure with DHCP, yes, and yes to DHCP6, but we're not using it. Now it's saying, do you want to revert to HTTP? And I'm just going to say yes. And it says, please wait while the changes are saved. Now, once that's changed, we should now see that both interfaces have an IP address, and we just want to make note that it's 52.1.5. And if we go into this is our test VM, and we can see that we're in the 52.1 subnet. So what we want to do is just do a request against the 1.5 address and see if we get HTML back, which we do. So now we've got access to our web configurator over HTTP. Now, how do we get a GUI onto that so we can configure it? Well, this is just the way you could do it in Linux. So we can go, okay, on the machine I'm on, forward port 80 to 10. What was the address again? 10.52.1.5. 10.52.1.5. Now, you may need to change this, like if it was the incorrect port. So let's just do that like this. And now we just grab our password again and copy that in. Now, if it says failed to forward, you know you've got an issue, but this hasn't output any errors. So now I'm going to go instead of here, I'm going to go to localhost and then 80.80, and not HTTPS because it's not that one, it's just normal HTTP. And I'm going to go admin and put in the default. Actually, it's not the default, we've changed that already. So I think it's just the password that I copied in. So, and we should now be able to connect into our PFSense from the LAN interface. Now, why can't we connect to the WAN interface? Well, we can see that there's absolutely no rules in there allowing any sort of connection. So what we can do to get the rules right, we can add one here. But before we do that, let's change over to HTTPS. Change to a custom port. So let's go 50443 so that just general people don't get to it. Let's turn off the redirect so that it doesn't change the redirect port 80 to this port. And I think that might be pretty good, but there's going to be an issue here if we do this. So we now need to add, let's start with that. We'll add some rules. We want to go WAN, TCP, any. Now we could put that down to a single host so to make it more secure, but we want to say to the WAN address, we want to go 50443 and create a rule that has that allowing that access. We want to do the same on the LAN interface as well. Allow LAN rule to any. That's the anti-lockout rule. Let's add another rule. We want to say any to the LAN address, and it's 50443 and it's TCP. Hit save, and we want that. That's good. Let's apply those changes. So now we've just given ourselves rules to allow ourselves to access things from both interfaces. Now we can go back into advanced and say, now I want it to be HTTPS. I want it to be 50443. I don't want it to redirect from 80 to that port because I don't want people to necessarily stumble upon it. And that, we might also want to enable secure shell. That's a possibility. And then you want to lock that down as well. But yeah, so now we've got save. And from now, we're going to have an issue because as we remember, we're port forwarding across this at the moment, but we no longer need to do that. So let's see what we can do. Getting to our WAN IP address. Whoop. And we'll just now put in 50443 and hopefully and hopefully now what's going on there? Let's go back to 80 10.52.1.5 50443. See if that's working. And this time we want it to be HTTPS localhost 8080. And it's pretty good. We've got to advance, continue to localhost. So that's working. But we're still not able to connect to, let's have a look at our rules again. Maybe we've made a mistake. WAN address 50443, Q, advanced. Do we have the right IP address for the WAN interface? Might double check that. We do, I believe. So it's still not working across. So what do we need to do? Well, let's try something. So it's still working from the subnet from the back end. So let's see what we've got. Source, destination, have I got that correct? I do, yeah. So maybe something else is wrong. Let's try something that it may be. Let's go network security groups. So I'm not sure if this is going to work, but we've got to try something. So this is a default. Now we're just going to say, okay, I'm going to add the ability for 50443 to get to TCP from any. That's allow, and see if that works. Then I'm going to go into our virtual machine, into here, into networking, into the primary or the front end interface, go into IP configurations, and go into IP config, and in the wrong spot. Network security group, here we go. PFS. And will this give us the ability getting close. So what is going on here? Let's have a look at the WAN interface. None. Apply. Okay, so I've just made a change there, and it seems that that now worked. Let's So we just need to copy our password, and now I believe we have now run into our next error. And this is the error is a HTTP referrer was detected other than what is defined in System Advanced. If it's not needed, this check can be disabled. So if we go System Advanced Admin, let's have a look. System Advanced and go into here. We might then just save it. So we're currently accessing it from the LAN interface. Let's try this again and see if this works, and it now should let us in. So that's now fixed that problem. Now there's a few things that we can change. We can go into General Setup, and we can go into IP in Azure. Go into IP configurations. No, we want to go into the front end NIC. Go into IP configurations and go to IP config, and we need to go public IP addresses actually, and we want to grab the public IP from the PFSense, and we can add here we can add so TGN PFS 01, save it. Not sure if you're allowed to put hyphens. I believe you are. Okay, so from that moment on, what we can do is copy, we'll go to our here and we go TGN PFS 01 and then change this and then save it, and then we go here TGN PFS -01, and obviously we need to specify the correct port, and we need to get the correct password as well. And finally, we have our PFSense firewall running within Azure with twin interfaces. Now there's a challenge that we need to check, and it's this one. If we so we go check web IP from command line, and I think there's an option here. Let's try Google. Check web IP from command line. Let's do it. Okay. Right, so we can so what we want to do should be a command called dig. Right, that's it. That's what we want. All right, so we're just going to run this. And notice that the IP address for this VM is 4196, but the IP address for our PFSense firewall is 20, and we want everything within this subnet not to use. We want to take off all the IP addresses, the internet IP addresses, and we want everything to go through the firewall. So how do we do that? So now we go into root tables. We create a root table, and we want to call it PFSense, and that'll do. And create. Now we go to that resource, and now we need to say we want to add a root, and the root name is okay, so it's the IP address of the next hop. Now we know the next hop is, what is the next hop? It's the interface IP of, so if we have a look at it, I think it's, it was 1.5, I believe. Let's just take it from that. So 10.IP address, yeah, it'll be 1.5, I think it was. 52 1.5, so 10.52.1.5. Want to add that. We call this, I don't know, PFSense. Now, once that's done, what we now need to do is add this routing table to the backend root, and it will now tell, so if I go ping I've just lost connectivity to this, so it's now really, it doesn't work. So it now needs to, it's not running through, it's now failed. So now what we need to do is we need to make a change also to our virtual machine, and we need to say, go into networking again, go into our backend NIC, and we want to go into here and go IP configurations, and we need to enable IP forwarding through this backend NIC. And it might be an idea to set this dynamically as well. To static as well, so that it's then always going to be the same. And if we have a look at our firewall and our NAT, we've got this natting being done, which is good. So anything from the backend subnet, so the LAN interface is already being sorted. So what we might do now is we want to port forward to this. Let's just make a port forward so that we can get onto, so we go into NAT, port forward. We're going to add a port forward from the WAN interface. The destination is the WAN address, destination port range is 22. The target IP is a single host, and it's this one. And there is no, the target port is the same. So we could make that a different port. Maybe we could go 5022. If you're already using SSH on your firewall. And let's try this now and apply. So now we want to try to connect again, but this time we're going to connect to the, have a look at our, oh, wrong one. So we're now going to connect to our firewall. Just wait for that to populate. Come on. Doesn't seem to be coming to the party. Okay, so now we're going to connect not to the public IP address, but we're going to connect to, what did we say it was, 5022. And we certainly need to also, every time, make a change to our inbound. So we definitely need to allow 5022 so that it can connect to our firewall. And we just need to wait for a moment. There it is, and yes. And now we're connected back into, through the firewall, through the PFSense, back into our test machine. And now when we run, we need to run dig, don't we, again, to get our IP address. What does it think is our external IP address? Notice that we're now using our PFSense as the gateway for that backend subnet. So the root table is critical, and then what you can do from there is with your networking with your VMs, they no longer, you can remove your public IP addresses because they're not going to work. So you would say go into IP configurations for the public IP address, and then remove that because it's no longer going to be used, because your traffic will come in and go out through the firewall, and you can grab and you can grab internet, and it's all coming through through the firewall, which then allows you, if you want to, with your firewall, you can say, okay, I want to add a firewall rule to block, maybe we need to go to the correct place, we need to go LAN, so we want to add a firewall rule to block from a single host. And what's this single host's name? 1.4, 10.52.1.4, and the destination could be any, and we just want to block port 443. So we could say, okay, from now on, this host can no longer, let's see if that works now. So we can say, okay, I've just blocked HTTPS for that one client on the subnet, but I could also still allow other traffic through. It would still work. Yeah, so basically we now have our PFSense firewall in place, doing filtering. All the LAN subnet is now using the PFSense as the gateway, and you've now got the ability to start deploying all sorts of other cool features of PFSense, such as geo blocking. One of the great ones is OpenVPN. You can now have clients dialing in and accessing your resources in the back-end LAN. But this, I hope, has been useful to someone.